Serena Williams changed the meaning of dominance in professional tennis and proved that greatness is built through relentless determination, not privilege or circumstance. Born in Compton, California, she rose from modest beginnings to become one of the most influential athletes in sports history, collecting 23 Grand Slam singles titles, holding all 4 major championships at the same time on 2 occasions, and earning more prize money than any woman before her. Yet her career was never defined solely by victories. Throughout her journey, Serena faced constant public scrutiny, criticism, and pressure while continuing to compete at the highest level with unmatched intensity and resilience. When her legendary career finally came to an end, it happened without the grand farewell many believed she had earned, marking not a defeat, but the conclusion of an era that transformed the sport forever. Behind the trophies and global recognition was a far deeper story, one built on sacrifice, discipline, and the extraordinary determination of a family that believed in a vision long before the world did. Long before Serena became a global icon, her father, Richard Williams, imagined a future few people considered possible. With no professional tennis background, no elite training connections, and limited financial resources, Richard developed a detailed plan to guide his daughters toward greatness after seeing the opportunities tennis could provide. Venus Williams was born in 1980, followed by Serena in 1981, and together they grew up in challenging conditions where ambition had to compete with hardship. The family eventually settled in Compton, where Richard trained his daughters on worn public courts surrounded by the realities of inner-city life. Using knowledge he taught himself through observation, study, and persistence, he introduced them to the fundamentals of tennis while pushing them to develop discipline, focus, and mental strength far beyond their years. Many dismissed his vision as unrealistic, but the Williams family continued their work quietly and relentlessly, building the foundation for a legacy that would not only reshape tennis, but inspire millions around the world who saw their own struggles reflected in Serena's rise to greatness. Richard Williams trained his daughters with an intensity that was designed to prepare them for far more than tennis. He believed pressure on the court should feel insignificant compared to the realities of life beyond it, so practices were demanding, disciplined, and mentally exhausting by intention. Serena and Venus learned to focus through chaos, growing up in an environment where distractions and uncertainty were part of everyday life. Their journey was not simply about developing athletic skill. It was about building resilience in circumstances where opportunity often felt out of reach. When the family later moved to West Palm Beach, Florida, Richard arranged for the sisters to train under renowned coach Rick Matchy, and it quickly became clear that Serena possessed a level of natural ability rarely seen in someone so young. Her speed, coordination, timing, and raw power separated her immediately, but what impressed coaches even more was her mindset. Even as a child, Serena competed with absolute confidence, carrying the belief that she was destined not just to succeed, but to become the very best in the sport. Richard eventually made the controversial decision to remove both daughters from the traditional junior tennis circuit, refusing to let the system shape their identity or confidence. Critics questioned the choice, but Richard wanted his daughters to develop on their own terms, away from the politics and expectations of a sport that had historically excluded athletes who looked like them. Serena turned professional in 1995 at just 13 years old, instantly standing out from the established image of what women's tennis was expected to be. Her serve was explosive, her movement powerful, and her style aggressive in ways opponents struggled to handle. Rather than embracing her uniqueness, many within the tennis world responded with criticism disguised as analysis, questioning her physique, her power, and her presence at the top level. Serena answered every doubt the same way by winning. In 1999, at only 17 years old, she captured her first Grand Slam title at the US Open, defeating Martina Hingis with a performance that forced the sport to recognize a new era had arrived. Even then, many wondered whether her dominance could truly last. It did. Serena Williams went on to build one of the greatest careers in sports history, collecting 23 Grand Slam singles titles, 4 Olympic gold medals, and sustaining excellence across multiple generations of competition, while permanently changing the future of tennis. Serena Williams' career cannot be measured by statistics alone, even though the numbers themselves are historic. What made her legacy extraordinary was not simply the championships, but the consistency of her dominance across multiple generations of competition. Through injuries, personal hardship, extended absences, and relentless public scrutiny. By 2002, Serena had established herself as the best player in the world, capturing 4 consecutive Grand Slam titles and holding all major championships at the same time, an achievement so rare that it instantly became known as the Serena Slam. At just 20 years old, she was overwhelming opponents with a level of power, precision, and mental strength the sport had rarely experienced. Yet despite her success, many critics still searched for reasons to question whether her reign would truly last. More than a decade later, Serena answered those doubts by completing another Serena Slam in 2015 at the age of 33, proving her greatness extended far beyond a single era. But between those remarkable achievements came years marked by personal tragedy and physical challenges that the public rarely understood in full. In 2003, Serena's older half-sister, Yetunde Price, lost her life in Compton, the same community where Serena and Venus had first learned the game. The loss deeply affected the Williams family, adding an emotional weight Serena carried quietly while continuing to compete at the highest level. Even as grief followed her through the years, she remained committed to her career, continuing to win championships under circumstances few people could truly comprehend. Injuries also became an ongoing battle. Knee problems, foot issues, and repeated physical setbacks threatened to interrupt her career at multiple points. In 2010, a severe foot injury required surgery and forced her away from competition during one of the strongest stretches of her career. Then, in 2011, Serena faced the most serious challenge of all when doctors discovered multiple blood clots in her lungs, a life-threatening medical condition that placed her health and future in genuine danger. She underwent emergency treatment, spent months recovering, and was forced to confront a situation far bigger than tennis itself. Yet once again Serena returned. She stepped back onto the court, resumed competing at the highest level, and continued building one of the greatest careers the sport has ever witnessed. While the public often focused on her serve, her power, or her pursuit of records, the deeper reality was far more remarkable. Serena Williams repeatedly overcame personal loss, physical pain, and enormous pressure while sustaining excellence for more than 2 decades, redefining what resilience in professional sports truly looks like. For much of Serena Williams' career, the public celebrated her strength while often overlooking the personal toll required to maintain it. Her resilience became so expected that vulnerability was rarely allowed to exist alongside her achievements. Every victory brought new expectations, every setback became global discussion, and the emotional cost of sustaining greatness was treated as secondary to the results themselves. By 2015, at 33 years old, Serena was producing one of the most dominant seasons tennis had seen in decades. She captured 3 Grand Slam titles and came within 2 matches of completing a calendar year Grand Slam, a feat not accomplished since Steffi Graf in 1988, when she suffered a shocking semifinal defeat to Roberta Vinci at the US Open. The moment became one of the sport's most unforgettable upsets. Yet even in disappointment, Serena handled the aftermath with remarkable composure, answering questions professionally while carrying the weight of a historic opportunity that had slipped away under the scrutiny of a worldwide audience. Throughout her career, Serena developed a reputation for refusing to publicly unravel under pressure, maintaining control even when the circumstances surrounding her were emotionally exhausting. That restraint became part of a larger reality she faced as one of the most visible athletes in the world. Many discussions surrounding Serena extended beyond tennis itself, focusing intensely on her personality, emotions, and reactions in ways that often differed from how other champions were evaluated. Incidents such as the 2009 US Open controversy against Kim Clijsters sparked widespread debate about sportsmanship and conduct, and while Serena later acknowledged her frustration crossed a line, the broader public conversation frequently became larger than the event itself. Comparisons emerged regarding how emotional intensity and competitiveness were interpreted differently across athletes, turning Serena into the center of ongoing cultural discussions that followed her throughout her career. Similar tensions resurfaced during the 2018 US Open final against Naomi Osaka, a rising star who had long admired Serena and modeled aspects of her game after her. What was expected to be a symbolic passing of the torch instead became overshadowed by controversy after multiple code violations, and disagreements with chair umpire Carlos Ramos altered the atmosphere of the match. The reaction from the crowd and the intense media focus transformed the final into one of the most debated moments in modern tennis history. Amid the controversy, Naomi Osaka's historic first Grand Slam victory was partially eclipsed by the surrounding tension, creating a deeply emotional scene during the trophy presentation. Through moments like these, Serena Williams' career consistently reflected far more than athletic achievement alone. She carried the pressure of expectation, public scrutiny, and cultural debate, while continuing to compete at the highest level for more than 2 decades, solidifying her place not only as one of tennis' greatest champions, but as one of the most influential athletes of her generation. During the aftermath of the 2018 US Open final, Serena Williams voiced frustrations that extended far beyond a single match, arguing that female athletes were often judged differently for the same behavior routinely accepted from male competitors. Her comments immediately divided public opinion, with some defending her stance while others criticized her reaction. Yet many observers and analysts pointed out that similar incidents involving male players throughout tennis history had frequently resulted in less severe consequences, reinforcing Serena's belief that the standards applied to her were not always consistent with those applied to others. Despite the controversy, nothing could restore the moment that had been overshadowed. Not for Serena, and not for Naomi Osaka, whose first Grand Slam victory became intertwined with one of the sport's most debated finals. For Serena, however, the larger issue was something she had been confronting throughout her entire career: the challenge of competing in an environment where expectations, scrutiny, and public perception often felt uneven. By that point, Serena was already 36 years old and preparing to face a challenge far more serious than anything she had encountered on a tennis court. In September 2017, Serena gave birth to her daughter, Alexis Olympia Ohanian Jr., a life-changing moment that quickly turned into a medical emergency. Shortly after childbirth, Serena began experiencing breathing difficulties and immediately recognized symptoms connected to her previous history with pulmonary embolisms. Trusting her instincts and understanding the seriousness of the situation, she repeatedly requested specific medical testing and treatment. Initial concerns were not immediately addressed, but Serena continued advocating for herself until doctors performed the necessary scans, eventually discovering dangerous blood clots in her lungs. What followed was a difficult and painful recovery that included emergency procedures, additional complications, and weeks confined to bed while trying to recover physically and emotionally after becoming a mother. Serena later chose to speak publicly about the experience, not simply to share her own story, but to highlight larger concerns surrounding maternal health care and the importance of patients being heard when describing their symptoms. Her experience became part of a broader conversation about disparities in medical treatment and the challenges many women face during childbirth and recovery, regardless of status or resources. By sharing such a deeply personal moment, Serena once again used her platform to bring attention to issues larger than sports, demonstrating that her influence extended far beyond championships and records. Even away from the court, she continued to show the same determination, resilience, and willingness to confront difficult realities that had defined her legendary career from the very beginning. The reality is that Serena Williams' global recognition is the only reason her medical emergency after childbirth became widely known at all, a moment that revealed far more about systemic healthcare disparities than it did about any individual experience. Just 6 months after giving birth to her daughter Olympia, she returned to professional tennis and reached the Wimbledon final in 2018, returning to the same tournament where she had first made history as a teenager. Now a mother, now recovering from a life-threatening pulmonary embolism and a difficult postpartum complication, she continued competing at the highest level under conditions that would have ended most athletic careers. She ultimately fell in the final to Angelique Kerber, but her journey did not slow. Carrying both the responsibilities of motherhood and the physical demands of elite sport, Serena spent the next several years pursuing one defining milestone: a 24th Grand Slam title that would place her alone at the top of tennis history. The record of 23, long held jointly with Margaret Court, remained just out of reach despite repeated deep runs in major tournaments, including finals and semifinals where she continued to challenge the best players of a new generation. Each attempt reflected the same pattern: extraordinary resilience, elite performance, and the mounting physical reality of an aging body tested across decades of competition. In September 2022 at the US Open, Serena played what would become the final match of her professional career. After announcing that she was stepping away from tennis, carefully framing it not as retirement but as an evolution into the next chapter of her life. Her third-round loss to Ajla Tomljanovic unfolded over 3 intense sets in Arthur Ashe Stadium, a venue named for a pioneer who had broken barriers of his own. That night, the atmosphere transcended sport, becoming a collective recognition of a career that had reshaped an entire era. For the first time in her professional life, Serena allowed herself to cry on court, openly and without restraint, as the crowd responded not with analysis but with gratitude and respect. At 40 years old, she had completed a journey that few ever imagined possible when she first trained on public courts in Compton under her father's vision decades earlier. Yet retirement introduced a new and unfamiliar reality, life without competition as its central structure. Today, Serena Williams continues to build beyond tennis through Serena Ventures, founded in 2014, which invests in startups with a strong focus on women and underrepresented founders, as well as her work in fashion, business, and advocacy. She is also a mother to 2 daughters, Olympia and Adira, and has spoken openly about the complexity of leaving behind a world that once defined every part of her identity. While her life is now full in new ways, she has acknowledged that nothing fully replaces the intensity, clarity, and emotional outlet of professional competition, the arena where every part of her story once came together. Serena Williams paused longer than the question required before answering, as if weighing not just the words, but everything they contained. "I miss it every single day," she said quietly. "Nothing replaces that feeling. Not business, not motherhood, not fashion, not success outside the sport. Nothing replaces stepping onto a court and knowing the world is about to see exactly who you are." In that moment, she articulated something that statistics, titles, and records can never fully capture. Her career was never just a collection of victories. It was a sustained challenge directed at every limitation placed before her. For more than 2 decades, she competed against expectations, criticism, unequal scrutiny, and systems that were never designed with her in mind. Yet she continued to answer all of it in the same language the sport understood: performance, dominance, and results that could not be ignored. What Serena built was more than a legacy. It was a sustained rebuttal to doubt itself. She did not simply win matches. She redefined what was considered possible, repeatedly forcing the world to recalibrate its understanding of excellence. And even in retirement, she remains a figure whose impact continues to unfold, her influence extending beyond tennis into business, culture, and representation. Richard Williams once created a plan that many dismissed as impossible, a 78-page vision built on belief rather than precedent. What followed was not just success but transformation at the highest level of sport. Serena's rise proved that talent alone was never the full story. It was persistence in the face of resistance, and an unwillingness to accept boundaries imposed from the outside. At every stage of her journey, she resisted the limits placed on her, not quietly but consistently through action and achievement. And while her playing career has ended, her presence has not diminished. She continues to build, invest, raise her daughters, and shape new spaces with the same intent that defined her time on court. Somewhere, the echo of that competitiveness still exists, not as an ending, but as a continuation in a different form. Serena Williams has never been a finished chapter. She has always been a force in motion, and the world is still adjusting to everything she already proved.